Hello, welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez and this is Interviews from Quito, the program where we explore the big challenges facing this country and the region. Today we will analyze the response by workers in Ecuador to the measures imposed by the government during the pandemic. Layoffs, salary reductions, rising gasoline, among others. Even before the pandemic, workers have taken to the streets across the country to demand respect for their rights, which were so hardly earned. But with COVID-19 measures in place, are protests being effective? Is the government really feeling the pressure? For that, we have José Villavicencio, president of Ecuador's General Workers Union. Thank you, José, for joining us. So first, what is the situation of workers in Ecuador at this moment?
It's a pleasure, Carla. The situation that the workers are now living is critical. It's complex. It's a product that the savage capitalism has done away with any social equality during this pandemic. And the governments that are to the service of the capitalism are seeking to keep on exploiting the workers of our country. It's evident that President Moreno, with a neoliberal politic to the service of the International Monetary Fund and to the banking groups, has implemented politics against the workers and the people of our country. In reality, our life now in our pandemic is complex. There's more than 240,000 workers that have been fired, and these type of policies are ongoing because the government has no capacity to solve the economic and sanitary problem of our country, and the consequences are being paid by the workers.
So, José, what is the current status of the demand that you have placed against the so-called humanitarian law to be abolished?
74 congressmen to the service of the politics of the capitalism and the banking groups have approved the humanitarian law. It has nothing to do with any humanitarian. It's a law of lie, and it's a lie because they said they were going to protect the jobs, and it was to reactivate the productive sector, and they were going to protect the rights of the workers. However, this law, from all points of view, vulnerates any type of constitutional precedents of our country. The international treaties, all of the international laws, and it's obvious that this law is perverse from all points of view. It tries to legalize the flexibilization in our country, and so we have called it the slavery card, because there is no third party that will regulate the legality, and the workers are at the risk of anything the employer wants. Now people are obligated to work longer hours and for less money. This is a perverse law against the workers. It's a law that will guarantee not the rights of the workers, but it will guarantee more firing, more exploitation, more misery. And with a basic salary of $180, and that is not enough for the basic needs, which is food, medicine, education. So in this line, our union have presented an unconstitutional demand and a cautionary regulation, so the law might be suspended provisionally, because we ratify that it's the slavery law that vulnerates all type of individual and collective rights of the workers.
So if it does pass, if you manage to block this law, what will be the future for thousands of people who have had their salaries reduced, their labor hours also reduced?
Ever since the sanitary emergency has been declared in our country, President Moreno has said that he was going to guarantee the jobs, both private and public. However, the Minister of Work, Labor Minister, sent some decrees that go against the law and the Constitution, and this has been reflected on the humanitarian law. What's going to happen with the workers that have been fired? And in many cases, they have had their hours reduced and therefore their salaries. This has been illegal and unconstitutional because the application of 169, number 6 of the Labor Code that says that you can, how you can bring to an end a working contract has to be with an emergency like earthquakes, flooding, and that has not happened. In the fact, the truth is that the infrastructure has not been touched. So there is no way that they could apply these laws in our country. And in this line, the workers have been fired. And so what will they have to do? The employees will have to respect the workers, and they will have to pay all of the indemnizations that that they have overseen. And in other cases, they will have to give back the jobs and the working hours, because from all points of view, this is unconstitutional, taking advantage of the sanitary emergency.
On the other side, what happens if the law is ratified, it's not blocked by this action? What actions can workers take? Can they go out on the streets and protest, taking into consideration that we have this pandemic still in our country?
The workers and the people of our country have said that we're going to do a legal protest, and that the Constitutional Court will have to act in the legal framework of our country so they can declare the unconstitutionality of this law. But it's obvious that the people all around the world need to confront this capitalism that has implemented laws against the people and the workers. And we have to do it on the streets. And in this line, the workers and the social sectors, the indigenous groups, working groups, housemaids are all rallying around a protest that's going to be taken to the streets to condemn this law, and also condemn the whole politics of President Moreno, because the workers will be reduced in their income. And in this line, the teachers too. And also because on May 19th, there was a very tricky law that he implemented, and it was to unify the prices of the gas. And we have said that in our country, if the gas is increased, everything goes up. And who's going to be affected? The middle class and the poor class. And this neoliberal politics are going against the Ecuadorians. And they're also bringing down some institutions that have been iconic for our country, like the railroads, like the mail, the post service. And we also have to condemn corruption, because now it has been revealed in many aspects. There is corruption in the police, in the military, in the public institution, like the Social Security institution, or like the purchase of humanitarian kits. So this march will be against also corruption. Because while the Ecuadorians are demanding jobs and food, a couple of people are just stealing from the Ecuadorians. So we will also want to combat corruption, and also in defense of our patrimony. We also have to defend the institution, the Social Security institution, because with this neoliberal politics, they want to privatize the health services. They also want to reduce the retirement pensions. They want to raise the age for retirement, but nothing is being said about the debt that the government has towards the Social Security Institute. They owe by the millions. And this line is the march of July 16 all around the country to continue struggling from the streets to confront this neoliberal actions that is the service to the capitalist service to the in favor to the elites, to the economic elites of our country.
You were speaking about this march that you're calling for on July 16th, but what will happen to people that are afraid of going out because we still have COVID-19 measures put in place to prevent the spread of the virus?
First of all, the workers condemn the position of the government, of the economic elites, of the banking groups that opposed to give some money in this pandemic to solve the economic problem and the health problem that we are going through. And now they're trying to say that the infections are because of the protests that we have convened, and we have condemned this. The only responsible in the government is the government, because they have had not the capacity to implement any type of economic solution. They have tried to pay, well, they have not tried, they have paid the foreign debt instead of ensuring food and medicine and jobs for their people, instead of giving everything the health service needs during this pandemic. And what they've done is they've done away with all of this health system, and they have destroyed the economy in our country. So this has provoked this massive numbers of infections because there has been no capacity to confront this pandemic. So to say that the responsibles of the infections are the workers and the people is a big lie, is a huge lie on behalf of the government. We have said that today we have two pandemics. One, the pandemic of COVID-19, and the other one is this government. And the corruption in this government has not been combated because it's inside the government. So the government must understand that corruption is also to affect the workers' rights. It's also corruption that all of the ministers have their relatives in consulates, in diplomatic offices, and they have also agreed with some senators to pass some laws in exchange for some jobs. So in this light, all of the necessary measures will be taken on July 16, but we cannot remain silent when all of these laws and that are going against our people and that are provoking misery. So the workers cannot remain silent. And we will do everything necessary on July 16. We will make our voices be heard and the rejection against these measures that are being carried out in our country.
So, Jose, we heard several workers in previous protests saying that they will march because they are more afraid of losing their jobs than now contracting the coronavirus. So would you say the same now?
It's obvious that the workers and the people of Ecuador have said that we are not only dying from the epidemic, but of hunger. So in front of this light, we have said that it's better to fight. It's better to die while fighting in favor of the people instead of just being quiet and being isolated because of COVID-19. So in this line, we will continue because it's obvious that there is a discontent in our country, because it can't be possible that while the Ecuadorian people don't have jobs, medicines, education, the government keeps on stealing our resources. When the worker pays their taxes monthly, what they're doing is giving money so these thieves just steal from us. So we have said that it's better to die standing against this savage capitalism and the neoliberal politics of this government. So we stand firm in these points, because it's not only that the Ecuadorians are dying because of the COVID, but also because the Ecuadorian government has these policies. And unfortunately, they have done they have used lies and to justify their incapacity to solve the economic and sanitary problem in our country.
So, Jose, you were mentioning the topic of corruption and how it affects workers, and we believe that one of the most vulnerable ones will be the health workers in Ecuador. They are denouncing that they don't have enough material, enough equipment to fight the virus. So what is their situation at the moment?
I said before that the health system was torn apart, and in this light, there were many people fired in 2018, 2019. Many workers were fired, among those doctors, nurses, of all of the health system. And it's obvious that in this emergency, this has been clearly reflected. But the people that are now working, the health workers, were sent to war with no weapons because they were not given protective equipment to confront this emergency. There was no budget, there was no necessary protection to confront the sanitary emergency and to save thousands of millions of people. This is why we have assessed the role of the workers, of doctors, nurses, all of the health workers, that regardless of these difficulties, of a government that really doesn't care to give them the PPE, they have now been in front line and doing everything they could. And with this, and they have not even been guaranteed stability at their workplaces. So now, around this slavery law, many workers, health workers, have been fired. So during this pandemic, the critical situation has been of the frontline workers of like health services and other public institutions that have had to do their jobs without the necessary protection. So it's obvious that the situation for the health system and for the public system like municipalities, the garbage service has been critical. It has been complex as a product of the consequences of a poor strategy in the social system of our country.
And that topic of the health system in Ecuador has also been affecting how the hospitals have been reaching their full capacity. And we've been, of course, news throughout the world on how we used to be the epicenter of the pandemic, and now our hospitals are being left without any equipment, and there's not enough beds to hold onto patients. Would you say that will be the case?
Let's not forget that President Moreno had said that it was not necessary to build more hospitals because it was too complex. It was too hard to administrate them. And in the same line, every year, the budget, the yearly budget, was affected for the health system. And this has all added up to the consequences that we are now living. We see that the health system in Quito is collapsed. And this is a direct product of that they preferred to pay the private clinics with overprice instead of building more public hospitals. And the few hospitals that were built had overprice of 100%, 200%, 300%. All this to corruption. So it's obvious that nowadays the Ecuadorians, and particularly the people from the capital city, are going through critical situations because of a health system that is now collapsed. But this is a product of our government, of the authorities that were pressed by the economic elites so they could and what they wanted, they lifted the quarantine and to change from the red light to yellow light. We had said that should not be done and that it was irresponsible and it was to be committing suicide because the necessary measures were not taken. There was not a prevention policy that we now need so we can go back to our activities and reactivate the economic sector. However, they did not hear. This always happens because they're totally deaf and mute and blind. And so it's obvious that the consequences that we are now going through, particularly the people of Quito, is a consequence of a government that did not adopt all of the correct policies according to what the WHO organization had offered. We did not have to go do away with the social confinement, but no, they had to privilege the economic factors.
So for our last question, Jose, do you think the march that you're calling for July 16th will have an impact, taking into consideration that we've had a really large manifestation and protest in Ecuador in October 2019 on the same topics? So would you say it will have the same impact, less, or how would you describe both protests?
In October, for the workers and the social organizations, for the indigenous groups, left us a big lesson that only unity of all of these groups will allow us to combat the government, because they have the economic power and they want to implement neoliberal measures, and that it has ratified that only the fight and the unity is the way to combat it. We have not discarded that there is a strike, a general strike of the workers. And in this line is that we are carrying out all of the actions that are been held in May, and that now we are going to start in July once again. So what happened in October is not totally disregarded, because this is the fight of the workers and the peoples, and it's only through it that the government will understand. And in this line, we are working without overseeing an element that is obvious, like the electoral process that is upcoming. Now the social sectors and the indigenous groups are now discussing the electoral process that must be seen as another instrument to combat this government. And those of us who defend the rights of the workers, of the indigenous people, of teachers, are still going against the rights of our groups. So while we're doing the legal strategies and taking to the streets, our groups are also preparing to give the Ecuadorians a new alternative in the upcoming elections. And in this light, we will continue to work. First, we want to thank for this space and to call on the workers and the people to the unity. It is time to come together and defend life. This means to demand work, medicine, food for the Ecuadorians. It is possible to have a new world, a new system, a new economic system that is in favor of the workers and the peoples. And we will do it through unity, through struggle. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Jose. So we've been talking to Jose Villavicencio, president of Ecuador's General Workers' Union, on the resistance by social movements to the economic and employment measures by the government of Lenín Moreno, which are affecting millions of people. Thank you for watching. This is Interviews from Quito. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.